Hello to our online and on-site participants. Good morning and welcome to our matutinal session of the second conference day. Prior to the coffee break, we'll hear 4 speakers who will for their presentations. 2 individuals and 1 joint tutorial presentation. Our first presenter is Professor Marko Tadić, who chairs the subdepartment of Algebraic and Computational Logistics at the Faculty of Humanities and Social Sciences at Zadar. Professor Tadić's linguistic office is very ample. He is, among other duties of his, an associate fellow of the Croatian Academy of Sciences and Arts, principal researcher in many international projects, and author or co-author of numerous Croatian linguistics resources. Professor Tadić will present to us a succinct overview of the current pan-European initiatives dedicated to the language technologies. For example, CLARIN, Metanet, as well as CF, ELRC, ELG, and ELE. Professor Tadić, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And I think I will have to share my screen. Okay. I hope you can see my slides now. Excellent. Thank you very much. I would like to thank the organizers, first of all, to give me this opportunity to say a few words about the current and ongoing initiatives in language technologies. And it's very important to stress that I'm talking about pan-European initiatives. And my talk will be, so I'd like to thank Croatia first as the coordinator of DARIAH-HR International Consortium for her kind invitation to assist the research infrastructure at CLARIN. And since I'm a national representative and national coordinator of Operation CLARIN, this sisterly or brotherly relation is natural, not just here, but in many other European countries where you even have common running projects called DARIAH or DARIAH-CLARIN or something like that. In different countries, there's different types of acronyms. And of course, I assume that the reason also to invite me and give a few words about this topic is the reason that back in 2012, I was the author, with 2 other authors, of a book published in Springer titled Croatian Language in the Digital Age. So this is a very well-known series of so-called Metanet white papers that has been published and gave a snapshot of the status of language technologies for 30 languages in Europe. So I will certainly say something about that as well. So my talk will roughly be, so I would now have to somehow try to move forward. And
use arrows.
Yeah, arrows don't help. Arrows don't help. Maybe okay. So I've been in Zoom, not in PowerPoint. Okay. So my talk will be briefly. So this is from the top view of what I will be telling about. So I'll put a bit of history at the beginning, and I'll talk about research infrastructures initiative like CLARIN. But for the time's sake, I will move all that information about CLARIN to this afternoon session, where we have a dedicated session about research infrastructures. And then I will say something on Metanet, Connecting Europe facility as a funding opportunity, ELRC and ELG, as well as ELE, the latest or the freshest pan-European initiative. And then I would like to conclude with examples of several smaller projects funded by CEF or Connecting Europe Facility that could be used as a role models for non-European under-resourced languages. So you can see that in this talk, I have 2 main focal points: pan-European and under-resourced languages. So this is the combination that I would like to stress. and how can under-resourced languages actually profit from that or benefit from these initiatives. So a bit of history. Well, whenever I think about language technologies and pan-European, and then connected with the Croatian Adriatic coast, I cannot simply forget about, and I would like to point out this piece of historical information to you, that actually back there in October 1989, so that was 2 weeks before the Berlin Wall came down, a conference with the title Language Industries, Needs and Perspectives was organized in Dubrovnik, a little bit further down to the south on the coast. In Dubrovnik, by my faculty, by my senior colleagues at that time. And why I'm telling about that as a bit of history, because that meeting actually from today's perspective could be considered to be a historical one. Because at that conference, for the first time, the language technology experts, that's what we could call them today. At that time, they were computational linguists, mathematicians, information scientists, IT experts, and so on. At that time, for the first time, experts from Western Europe and Central and Eastern Europe came together physically in one conference. And that was actually how the pan-European ideas were born. Okay, so that they started to collaborate and coordinate any kind of pan-European language technology communities. Okay, and forgive me for using the shortcuts or sorry, the acronyms here. So I'm introducing acronyms for the sake of space that I have to fit a lot of information. So let me just spell out several names which you will probably find or you know. So Antonio Zampoli or John Sinclair. Helmut Schnele and Nicoletta Calzolari from the western side, and then Ferenc Kiefer, Janusz Wien, Petras Galeva Hajčová, Solomon Markus, Elena Pascaleva. So if you remember these names, these are really, I would say, the key figures in computational linguistics from both sides of Iron Curtain at that time. And as young assistants, for instance, there was Gabor Proseki, who is now the general director of the Hungarian National Language Institute, or Tomáš Erjáves, who just got the Stephen Crowder Award in Clarin, Eric. And I had the privilege as a young assistant to help in organizing this conference. So this is actually where I would say the pan-European idea started, because you really cannot say that something is pan-European if it's not covering really Western and Central and Eastern Europe. Otherwise, it's just limited in scope. Right. So out of this meeting or out of this very important conference, there were the first pan-European initiative stemmed, I would say, as firstly as a trans-European projects. So, and that means experts from not just from European Community or European Union, but also those who were freshly introduced back, I would say, back into Europe. Now, let me give you a bit of chronological context at that time. The famous and notorious Eurota project ended in 1992. It is notorious because it didn't provide what it promised, high quality functioning machine translation system for different bodies of the European Union. But it came out with a very important long-term impact on the language technologies in Europe. Because out of that project, the idea came out, and it has been finally put to the light that there's a serious lack of very large volume and high quality language resources. So you cannot even imagine building any kind of machine translation system without enough of language resources collected. Okay, and that's one of the reasons why the European Language Resources Agency was established in 1995, run by Khalid Shukri today in Paris, situated in Paris. But I cannot simply skip over two very important integrating factors as well, two important projects called ELSNet 1 and 2, European Language and Speech Network. This is what this acronym meant, run by Stephen Crowder from the University of Utrecht from 91 to 92 and from 96 to 99. So these are the first like Trans-European project, trying to combine experts from what used to be a divided Europe earlier. And secondly, there has also been initiatives to start this pan-European combining through infrastructures. And this idea could be traced back to the TELRI, the Trans-European Language Resources Initiative, that was the first initiative to try and recommend common methods and common technological frameworks for different languages. Okay? So that TELRI was run also by John Sinclair and Antonio Zampoli. It ended up in 2002 by the final workshop, also held in Dubrovnik, by the way. That's interesting. And this infrastructure, first infrastructure-like project, actually wanted to put an umbrella over different rising national research ambitions on the field of language technologies in Europe, with particular emphasis on Central and Eastern European languages because they were lagging behind language technologies in comparison to the Western European languages. Chronological context, the famous Eagles project ended in '96, and that project actually provided also very much used multext and multext-east recommendations for several layers of annotation of corpora and digital text. This is also very important because, as you see, a lot of things were packed into the first half of '90s and second half of '90s. Okay, so here I will have to tell something about Clarin and Clarin Eric, but for the time's sake, I've moved that to the afternoon talk. So I'll just mention this, that the Clarin project lasted from 2008 to 2011. And in 2012, Clarin was established as Eric. Okay, so I will stop here about Clarin, we'll talk about it later. But quite soon, or even during the Clarin project was still running, another pan-European initiative was initiated and run, and it's called Metanet. So it was organized in a very interesting way. It was organized as one very big umbrella project, actually network of excellence in FP7 framework program. It was called T4Me. There were like 6 main partners. But then under that umbrella, there were 3 additional geolinguistically orientated smaller projects funded from a completely different program. So the T4Me was funded from FP7. These 3 projects were funded from ICT PSP program. And they were called Metanet for you, and then you would expect Meta something again, but it was Caesar at the end, because I'm guilty for this latest charge for this acronym, because it was made after Central and Eastern European resources. Okay? And of course, if you look at Roman limes and see where the Danube actually really covers all the Central and Eastern European countries, a part of Poland, which was also included, but nevertheless somehow inclinated towards Danube, it makes also very much sense. So all these projects actually ended together in a very big event in Berlin in end of January 2013. But they actually were very well structured, coordinated by Germany, of course, very well structured pan-European actions. That's the first time that 30 different European languages were tried to be covered. So there were at that time 23 official EU languages, plus 7 other official languages in other countries, assessing countries and adjoining countries. Okay, and the idea was to have a common harmonization effort where the language resources and language tools for all these 30 languages were to be put into the state that will assure their sustainability. That means that usually when you do some digitally based linguistic project today, you collect a nice corpus or a lexicon or something, you complete your project, you write your report, you publish your papers, and then this collected data remains on your hard disk or your DVD on somewhere collecting dust, died after 20 years because DVDs cannot be read anymore. So that makes no sense, absolutely. So that was one of the main ideas, to draw out from the darkness all the collected language resources that has been invested by time and money, okay, and people's work. And then also, while you do that, you also have to ensure the interoperability and then reusability of these resources. And the general aim was to enable further development of language technologies for Europe that is basically multilingual, of course. And one of the biggest, I would say, outcome of this Metanet was the MetaShare, the federation of repositories, where you have a number of more than 2,000 different language resources and tools available and services. And that were actually scattered around as smaller repositories in different participating countries, but they were also harvested by the central nodes. And two central nodes are in ILSP in Athens in Greece, and one is in DFKI headquarters in Berlin. And of course, all these resources were predominantly, or are predominantly still available through permissive licenses. And that means open access, actually, wherever possible. But then in some cases of commercial usage, you can get them for fee, of course. And so the result, this is a very important result, because that was the first, somehow competing with Clarin, running in the very same time. But what needs to be stressed here, Clarin is predominantly oriented towards researchers. This was also open for industry, trying to give boost to a European language technologies industry. And this is something what is really important, because they say only that the translating market is valid a few billions of euros in Europe. Okay, so there's a lot of bucks there running. We could really tackle that. Another very important project that outcome that I mentioned earlier is the Metanet white papers, as you know. But another thing was also very important, published 2 years after the Metanet officially ended, was the Metanet strategic research agenda. And that was a research agenda in language technologies for multilingual Europe in 2020. So that was now 8 years ago. But this very research agenda actually put the foundations for the next pan-European initiative that I will mention a little bit later. But I cannot skip over Connecting Europe facility. So I see I'm running out of time, so I'll try to be rather quick right now. If you look at the Connecting Europe facility, in Croatian it's translated in quite awkward way, Instrument za povezivanje Europe. Okay? Funny, but unfortunately that's what translators in Brussels did, or Luxembourg, wherever. Yeah, those of you who graduated English here can shoot their heads as much as possible. Okay, so this is, I will not read that. So this is basically what the Connecting Europe facility does. So a part of making a large infrastructure like in transport, like railroads or roads or bridges, and then you have this CEF Telecom, which also builds a broadband internet. CEF Digital also cares about the digital content that has been pushed through this broadband internet. Okay? And DSI, digital service infrastructure, is meant as a building blocks that will help and that will keep the digital single market together. And so one of these building blocks is machine translation system that has been now offered by the European Commission to all member states for free. So Commission opened its machine translation service. First it was called CEF.at, automatic translation, but then now it's renamed into e-translation. And it's free for all public administration in all member states. So if you're working in a municipality the island across this channel, then you are entitled to register as a free user, and you can use MT service, machine translation service by European Commission for free. Okay. And in last year, in 2020, it has been open for free for small and medium enterprises, so SMEs from the European Union as well. And it also includes languages outside of European Union, so European Economic Area, like Icelandic is included, Norwegian. And a few months ago, this system also now covers Chinese, Russian, and Arabic as important non-European languages. Okay? So why am I telling that? Because this CEF e-translation became a flagship, I would say, pivot point for language technologies at this moment in Europe, particularly regarding the funding. So through this project, the ELRC, the European Language Resources Coordination, has been funded, and I will say a few words about it right after CEF. But there has been excellent opportunity for opened with this line of funding for under-resourced languages through several CEF calls, and all in all, 29 smaller projects were funded, and many of these projects will run until 2023. And they were oriented towards tackling the problem of that are connected with e-translation, that is the lack of large pair of corpora in desired language pairs, but also very much extremely important in domain. This is what makes the translation high quality, machine translation output of a higher quality. That's one of the reasons why Google Translate does not translate very well, because Google takes everything from web, not taking care about domain. As well as you all know, we use the same word, literally the same, with different meanings in different domains. Okay, so if you have information about domain, then you can have more precise translation into another language. So if it's domain restricted. Okay. And these, of course, this was concentrated towards languages with deficient language resources. So there's additional funding approved earlier this summer. So there will be CEF2, and the funding is assured in 2027. So there's still a lot of work to be done with e-translation, either in Horizon Europe or CEF2, or even EU data space that has been announced as well. One important parts in Horizon Europe. Now, let me say a few words about running initiative, European Language Resources Coordination. So this is now you can schematically see here how Connecting Europe facility relates to transport, energy, and telecom. And in telecom, you have this digital and digital service infrastructure. And inside there, you have e-translation, and there's the ELRC inside e-translation. Okay, that's where this initiative is running, or what is it running for? And it's been organized following the good model from Metanet, but more firmly. Again, coordinated by Germans, the same German institution. And there are 30 ELRC technological national anchor points, so experts in language technologies, but this time they are coupled with their counterparts in public administration services. So in each country, you have someone who is the language technologies expert and someone who is the representative of public administration. This is extremely important because, and the organization was also quite firm. There's a series of workshops organized every 2 years in each country, each of these 30 countries, that have the goal to raise the awareness of the importance of language resources. And sometimes people from public administration, and they are the community that has been addressed with this approach, they are even not aware that this piece of paper that they have printed out, but they have it stored as a Word file somewhere on a disk, is actually a language resource. Very valuable language resource from their area, from their domain. I mean, you have ministries for different domains, and if you can only collect all the publicly funded, therefore publicly opened documents. That would be enormously helpful to machine translation systems that has been developed by the union. So what does ELRC do? You can see here, collects the resources, identify the needs of public services, then engage the public sector, and then provide also help or act as some kind of observatory. So this is what I said earlier. So you can really provide a higher quality translation if you add source text and target text from in-domain data. Okay. So out of domain data are in red. They will not help in that. It's the in-domain data that we want to find out and take out. So here you see a progress. So the project started in April 2015, and then by the April 2021, we already have, so you can see here how it looks like, we already have almost 2,500 collected language resources provided by ELRC, and there you see the progress by languages. And it's in ELRC share repository, similar to MetaShare. Actually, it's really, I mean, the same ELSP, ILSP from Athens developed both softwares, repository softwares for both of these. So here you can see that there are 4 different types of resources: corpora, lexical or conceptual resources, language descriptions, and then language tools. They are outside of the screen here. So, and there's also very, very helpful and technical and legal help desk. Legal issues are very important, and they're becoming very, I would say, pain in the neck for us collecting language resources from internet, for instance, or somewhere else. I mean, you had a workshop 2 days before on that. Pavel Kamotsky was here. He's also a legal expert in Clarin. So I know where the problem is. And they say that anonymization would be a way to tackle that, but I'm not quite sure because it's connected with a number of different other problems. So this Metanet strategic research agenda actually gave the foundations for this European language grid, which is the next initiative I would like to show. And here I see that I'm running out of time, so I have to be very quick. So the idea was to make a one-stop shop for anyone interested in language technologies in Europe, whether you're a researcher or industrial partner. So the idea is to put everything what is available, what could be collected and what could be represented in a grid, in a cloud, and freely available to everyone. Even the software solutions, the tools are Dockerized and stored as a running Docker installations. So you can simply download that and it will work, or you don't even have to download it. You simply process your data up there in the cloud and you get your results down. So I'm not, of course, going to read all that, but I hope this is being recorded, so you can rewind the video always and read the details. So this is the current state of the play in September 2021. So you see there are 356 functional services and tools, so 2,692 different corpora, more than 800 lexical and conceptual resources. Conceptual means that they are ontologies or something like, which is conceptually based, not headword based, like lexical resources are. And almost 1,800 organizations have already been included in this European language grid. And you should differentiate between the 2 sites. One is the European language grid project site, the other one is the grid itself. So the right-hand one is where you do the processing, where you access all the services and data. So what you can do with that, you can either be a data consumer or service consumer, or you can be data provider. So, or you can be both. If you're a translating company, you might be in the need of machine translation. But then when you do your translation and produce translating memories, you can, for instance, be a data provider in this aspect as well. Okay, so that's something, particularly if you, for instance, do translation for public bodies. And today that this is the recommendation that whenever any public body in European Union outsources the translation of documents that are publicly funded and available, the translation also has to be publicly available. But not just translation, but also translation memory produced from that translation should also be publicly available. Okay? This is a very important step towards the larger availability of in such way collected resources. And of course, there is a very interesting conference running since Metanet times and being now supported by ELG. It's Meta Forum, and a large Meta Forum will be organized in June next year in Brussels. Within ELG, there's been several calls for smaller projects. All in all, 19 of them have been funded, and they all in all, that was roughly 2 million euros. So all of them, smaller projects directly funded from ELG, and you can see the list of these projects here. And I would like to conclude, since I'm running already, with the European Language Equality Project. So this is the sister project to ELG. In fact, somehow ELI will use the technical infrastructure of ELG. But this is very important initiative because it has opened for the first time a new line of funding, and that is directly from European Parliament. So not the Commission, not any other body, but European Parliament directly. And we believe that this smaller preparatory project, if you want to call it like that, that will last only for 18 months, will actually is coming out of European Parliament resolution named P8TA 2018, and so on and so forth, called Language Equality in the Digital Age. So if you see the voting, if you know anything about European Parliament, you may say, I have never seen such a majority of votes for something and such a small number against it. Okay, so this resolution passed with flying colors, I would say. But it's very important because I've extracted only 3 points here. Recommendations. So in this resolution, it is recommended that there should the community should establish a large-scale and long-term coordinated funding program, okay, for research, development, and innovation in the field of language technologies. The idea behind it is that if a language will not have language technologies developed by 2030, it might be considered digitally and therefore in 21st century functionally illiterate, because it will stay on the other side of digital divide and it will not be used in normal communication channels of the 21st century. And these are the normal channels. That's what we also have with us. And of course, this has to be European LT platform. So this resolution is extremely important because we believe that it will influence the development in LT domain for the next 10 or 15 years. Okay. So really is a very modest one, I would say, but it's very important because it will provide 3 main components: agenda, and see what's the state of language technologies in the same countries that we covered 10 years ago. What's the state today? What has changed? What has developed? And then provide a roadmap and, of course, do the dissemination, a lot of talk about that, right? And the expected results, of course, is updates on this 21 Metanet white paper. So you can expect a new round of these things next year. And but it will also include industrial partners, or it will be oriented towards industrial partners. And very important, Metanet was covering only official languages. Here, also the minority languages are included. So in really, all in all, 77 European languages, either official or minority languages, are included. So you can talk about Rheto-Romanic, about Provençal, about Catalan, and so on and so forth, or Basque. That's the result by from a month ago. This is how what was collected. And so I can stop here if you want, because I've run over time, or I have 4 more slides. It's up to the chairperson to decide what to do.
Okay, maybe we have a chance for the afternoon to also hear the rest of your presentation, the rest of the slides, and the declaring history. Thank you, Professor Tadić, for your excellent and comprehensive presentation for a time being. Chronologically epitomizing a pan-European initiative perspective and novelties, with a special emphasis laid on the under-resourced languages. According to our schedule, our next presenter is Professor Achim Rabus, who will elucidate to us the application of handwritten text recognition, exemplified by the transcription of Glagolitic text and enhanced by artificial intelligence. Professor Rabus chairs the subdepartment of Slavic linguistics at the University of Freiburg, and is, inter alia, a former Humboldt Scholarship beneficiary at the University of California, Berkeley. It is our honor to yield the floor to Professor Rabus.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this kind introduction, and thank you very much for the invitation. I will be talking about a very specific issue, and this is the AI-assisted transcription of Croatian Glagolitic sources using handwritten text recognition technologies, and specifically the Transkribus platform. So what is Transkribus? Transkribus is an AI-assisted and very, in my opinion, very user-friendly tool, and this tool can be trained to transcribe a different array of manuscripts and also early printed books that are written in a variety of languages, script styles, alphabets, and other varieties. So the key point is that you have to train a model. You have to have so-called training data that is high quality images and corresponding diplomatic transcriptions. And if you have that, you trigger the AI algorithm, and it will start learning what is written on these pages. And Transkribus, this is a disclaimer. I'm not a developer of Transkribus. I'm a Slavist. I'm a regular user, and I have trained a couple of models using these platforms. And I will be talking about that in a minute. There are 2 different flavors of Transkribus. First is the expert client. This is on the upper right here, a screenshot. You can download it, you can install it, and then you can use it on your PC. I think it's not as user-friendly as the Light client, which is browser-based, down below here. This is really fancy and really beautiful and modern, but the expert client provides more functionality. So for starters, I recommend the Light client, browser-based, but for experts, please use the standalone client. So what is handwritten text recognition? Handwritten text recognition is a technology that is considerably more advanced than traditional optical character recognition. Optical character recognition can be considered more or less a solved task. If you have modern printed books, it's no problem to scan them using different tools, and the text will be recognized quite easily and with a high quality. But with handwritten text, also in minority languages or in historical languages, this is more complicated. And this algorithm, the handwritten text recognition algorithms, they take into account not only individual characters, but also the neighboring characters and whole words and even whole lines. Essentially, HDR technology is a kind of a line-based approach, right? And because of that, a recognition quality gets better and better. So how does this work? As mentioned before, we provide the machine with high quality images and the corresponding diplomatic, that means line by line transcriptions. And then the machine learns what is written there. And this is a typical learning curve of a neural network. This means in the beginning, the algorithm gets better and better. But in the end, it needs more epochs to just get slightly better and to arrive at this point. So how do we measure quality of handwritten text recognition models? We use the so-called character error rate, or CER. CER means how many characters have been recognized incorrectly by the machine, as compared to a manually corrected sample, right? And we know that a character error rate of below 10% produces usable results. And if you have a model with a character error rate of around or even below 5%, these are really good results. So what does that mean for Croatian Glagolitic? I have trained a couple of models for Angular Glagolitic. This is a typical Croatian old style Glagolitic handwriting, and also for Glagolitic earlier printings. They are publicly available via the Transkribus platform. And the ground truth, that is the training data, consists of tens of thousands of word tokens. And this means that the models learned to be kind of flexible, not just tailored towards one specific source, one specific manuscript, but these models are capable of reading a variety of different sources. And everyone is invited to try these models out free of charge, but please have a look at the fine print. There's a business model by Transkribus. If you are a new user and you register, you get 500 credits for free, and you can use these credits to transcribe around 400 pages at no cost. But if you need more transcriptions, you have to obtain new credits. So let's talk about my models. The first public model is the handwritten Glagolitic model. And the training data consists of more than 170,000 word tokens. The error rate is 5.7%. And I applied the so-called recycling approach, meaning that I did not transcribe, or my team did not transcribe everything from scratch, but we reused already existing editions, transcriptions that were originally meant for other purposes, such as printing books, what philologists do, right? Okay, so we took these word files and we aligned them within Transkribus, and then we trained our model. And due to the quality of the training data, the model acquired some smart capabilities, meaning it automatically transcribes from Latin, from Glagolitic script to Latin script, and it is able to deal with ligatures and expand the most common abbreviations. In old texts, in these church texts written in Glagolitic, there are very many abbreviations. That means words like the Lord or Christ or something like that will be abbreviated. But the AI learned to expand these abbreviations, and we will see that in a minute, namely at this on this slide, right? Okay, so I don't know how many in the audience are able to read Glagolitic, but I assume some of you do. And this is what the model produced with this manuscript. And we see it has been able to read ligatures. This is a ligature, p-r, right? So this is has been transcribed correctly. The same holds for t-v here. This is what happened there, right? But of course, there are also some errors. Here we see word separation has gone wrong. And what happened there is completely unclear to me because the algorithm just added random letters. This sometimes happens if you use neural networks. This is a black box. You don't know why something has happened the way it did, right? Okay, so this is what I like best about these models. And these are expansions of abbreviations. We have a word here, and we have this little sign over there, which means this is an abbreviated word. And everything written in round brackets has been added by the AI, and this is correct. And the same holds for this word here. We have bl, n, and everything here has been automatically added by the model. And I really like that because this is kind of intelligent. This is really smart. Okay, so let's talk about my second model. The second model is for early Glagolitic printings. It's a smaller model, but the CR is better. And that's not by coincidence, because if you have a more regular text in printing, you do not need that much training data to obtain decent results. This is collaborative work with the University Library in Tübingen. And it looks like that. So we have these old printings, and the model does the same. It's able to cope with ligatures here and here, but there are also some weird errors. For instance, here, where one clearly visible letter has been omitted, and no one knows why. So these two models are available, publicly available within the Transkribus platform. Please try them out if you're interested in that kind of technology. There's a third model. This model has not been made available yet because this is ongoing work. It's a collaboration between my department and the Old Slavonic Institute in Zagreb. And we are jointly working on the edition of the first Croatian printed book. This is the Missal of 1483. And we applied an interesting workflow. So first, we used one of my models to transcribe a couple of pages of these of this source. There were quite a few errors, but the colleagues from the institute, they manually corrected these errors, and then we retrained a model and made it more specific towards this particular source. So we improved this model, leading to a considerably lower character error rate. And 4.6% might not sound that impressive for printed sources, but the real world performance with respect to this specific source is quite okay, I think. You can see it here. This is the source, and here we have a transcription, and everything in red and green is the difference between the HTR hypothesis, that is the transcription provided by the machine, and the correct philological transcription. So essentially, there are only errors with respect to word separation and hyphenation. This, of course, speeds up the editorial process considerably. What remains to be done, and what can be done together? We know Angular Glagolitic is beautiful and is very nice, but there are other forms of Glagolitic script, particularly a Glagolitic cursive script. We haven't trained any models for that. And I invite anybody interested, please get in touch. We can try to find ground truth training data and train models for that as well. It should be possible, and I am looking forward to cooperation. Also, with respect to the oldest variant of Glagolitic script, around Glagolitic script, there hasn't been done anything yet. To conclude, in my opinion, Transkribus and HDR technology is an extremely powerful tool, and it's at the same time, it's quite user-friendly, and this is appealing to humanities or digital humanities. But because my peers, usually they prefer a graphical user interface over a command line, right? There are different target groups, but in order to reach a wide audience, it's really important to be user-friendly. And this means that HDR technology is a game changer for digitizing the Croatian and also world cultural heritage. The models can be made better, but they're already quite decent in my opinion. But if you have more training data to share, please do so. Please share your editions, transcriptions, your word files originally produced for printed editions or online editions or whatever. And we will jointly reuse these data and make the models better for the benefit of all of us. Please don't hesitate to get in touch. Thank you very much.
You, Professor Rabus. Finally, according to the agenda, our last presenters are Antoine, Doucet, and Axel, Jean-Caurant, who will provide us with a closer view to the historical newspapers through the prism of NewsEye. Mr. Doucet is a full professor employed with the University of La Rochelle, where he specially investigates document analysis and digital content. On the other hand, Mr. Jean-Caurant is a research engineer who has been operational in the segment of document accessibility in the digital library holdings. So let us hear the news on the NewsEye tentatively.
Hello, sorry, thank you for this kind introduction. I'm not sure if Axel is connected because he was being rejected from the Zoom. So please let me know if I cannot follow up with him. So please let me know if he's connecting, but otherwise I will make a slightly longer presentation. I will present the NewsEye project focusing on historical newspapers and how we handle historical newspapers in several European languages. And just so, I mean, Axel is supposed to make a demonstration. The plan is to make a short presentation and Axel would follow up with a demonstration. But if he is not connecting, I mean, so please let me know if he's here. I will ask at some point. And if he is not, I will go on giving you more details. So the NewsEye paper is a project focused on subtitled Digital Investigator for Historical Newspapers. And I'm coordinating it from La Rochelle University in France. To give you a few words of context. It's a Horizon 2020 project that has been starting in 2018, is ending next January, and has been extended for the reasons we all know and we don't want to talk about. It's a project in digital humanities, combining the three types of partners that I mean, there's so many, I shouldn't even mention this, we should not discuss. The notion of digital humanities is always something that can stir a very heavy debate, but at least we have institutions who are sharing data, the libraries. We have 3 national libraries providing data. We have 4 research groups in computer science who are producing tools to analyze data and analyzing data. And we have 4 teams in digital humanities who are here to verify that actually what the computer scientists do makes sense for the researchers in digital humanities. And they work on different topics, which I will mention later, and actually work in different domains of the humanities. The reason to work with historical newspapers, there's actually very many reasons. It's motivated by the fact that millions of pages, actually tens of millions of pages, have been digitized in many digitization campaigns around Europe that have started as soon as, I mean, the biggest one started in the 90s, and the effort is continued because there's, of course, the vast is reach and there's a lot to digitize. However, digitizing is nothing more than taking pictures of pages. And in the case of newspapers, this is not sufficient because we have articles. I mean, the level of the semantical level that makes sense is actually articles. Pages are in general not really a relevant level. And you have many challenges. Sorry, I was looking for this, and it connects very well with the presentation of Achim or Achim. I'm not sure how to present. The person who presented just how to pronounce. Sorry, the person who presented just before me, because he was talking about text recognition. Of course, it's especially difficult for Glagolitic, but it's also hard for what so-called big languages like French or English with newspapers, because newspapers are old. I mean, all newspapers, sorry, all newspapers are old, they are damaged. And one important thing is that they are, you can see what I'm pointing with the laser pointer, that this is very hard to read, for instance, because the paper was folded. Sometimes you have stamps, stamps from the libraries. And sometimes the ink is showing from the back side to the front side of a page. And the reason is that newspapers, they are a daily consumable. You're basically expected to buy them every day and throw them after you read them. So that this is doable, they have to be cheap. And so that they are cheap, they are printed on cheap paper and they are printed with cheap ink. And they were never intended to be saved for hundreds of years. So they are particularly easily getting damaged with time. They are a goldmine nonetheless they are important because they are a goldmine for digital humanities or humanities scholars and also the general public, because they are a very extensive description of the past, which has the interesting property to be written in the present. They are always, well, they were written shortly after the events that they are describing. So there is a lot of information to support quantitative analysis for digital humanities. But unfortunately, there are no tools specifically designed. I mean, there's more and more efforts and platforms being developed for historical newspapers, but this is a very recent effort, and there is need to do this. And as you understood, the masses of data that are available in libraries are huge and cannot be addressed manually at all. I mean, of course, there is no debate about that. So the challenge we have is that, as I said, if you have a newspaper like this one, you don't want to analyze all the text as one. You want to look at articles, and the first task is to extract the articles. So, and it's not always simple because, for instance, in this case, you see that this is one column, and it goes on here for a few lines. And in some cases, it's 2 columns, like here. or like here, you can find the two columns because maybe the title is covering the two columns. But in this case, you have two columns and the title is only on the left-hand side. So there's lots of exceptions, lots of questions. And here you could think that there's something else, but actually it's part of this one, of this whole thing. So you see already in this very simple example, and then believe me, there are far worse examples. In this very simple example, you can already see that there's several layers of structure, and there's already exceptions in this, like 4 articles that you can see. And you can even argue that this is actually several sub-articles, because all these you cannot see, but all these paragraphs discuss different topics. This one, this one, this one. Anyway, the first challenge is to find the articles, because you don't want to make a soup of all the different articles in the same page. And that's already a challenge. And the second step is to extract the text. And this was already illustrated in the previous talk. You want to find the text. Sorry for an example in French, but you will maybe realize that I can tell you that this 01KE, that's not what it should find. It's actually ON. So you move from 2 letters to 4 letters, and they are none of them are correct. Maybe 1 if you assume that 0 and O are the same. And you lose a lot of the structure. What is generally interesting is that if you're a French speaker, and you can verify it with all these OCR problems, most of the time, unless it's really, really bad, but most of the time the OCR is good enough to read. You can read this. You know, I saw immediately that this 01KE should be ON. I see that this 1 comma is actually L. And I can read the text quite easily. My brain is able to do the neural analysis, maybe the deep learning. I don't know how my brain works. My brain can allow me to read this text, even though many of the words are wrong. However, if you want to do quantitative analysis, and if you want to simply make a query on a name or on a word, well, if that word is changed, it will not be found. The document will not be found. And this is especially interesting when you start looking for people's names. Typical queries are, or typical analysis made by researchers, and also typical queries made by the general people, general public are person names, locations, organizations, what we call named entities. It allows a finer analysis, it allows to build sub-collections, and it opens the door to quantitative analysis, but it requires to find the names as a pre-processing. And here are some examples. So, for instance, this lard tweed moo space ttju is supposed to be lord tweed mouse. And of course, if you're interested in lord tweed mouse, this document will not be found. So the challenge of recognizing named entities in document collections, like in historical document collections like this one, is well, to find names and identify names that are actually not there, at least not in your OCR version of the document. Then there's another very important layer, which is the disambiguation or the linking of named entities, is to tell you this other thing I highlighted, Kaiser. So which president, which Kaiser? If you read text at different times, there's often mentions of a Kaiser, there's often mentions of a president, but depending on what time you're reading the newspapers, it's a different person, of course, because everyone has a different term. So even nowadays, if you talk, I mean, a newspaper talking about the French president today is talking about a different person than a newspaper talking about the French president 10 years ago. And 10 years ago, I can think and remember who it was, but if you ask me in 1852, I'm not so sure. And you also have to connect, and the good thing, so the idea is actually to link every person, I mean, every entity, actually, every person, every location, every organization, who are the very typical named entities, is to link them to knowledge bases. So, for instance, Wikipedia or Wikidata. And this gives you a unique identifier for Guillaume II, who is in English known as William II. Guillaume II, who is known in English as William II and known in German as Wilhelm II. And the good thing, already you can already guess from what I said, from the good thing if you link them to an external knowledge base is that they will get a number as an identifier, which is the entry in the knowledge base. And that identifier is unique, whatever the language. So if you have a French document talking about Guillaume II, or if you have a German document talking about Wilhelm II, same number. And then you can do cross-lingual analysis on top of the quantitative analysis that was allowed by named entity recognition. And I will tell you a bit more. I don't know if everyone is familiar with named entities or not. I just want to remind that this is a real-world object, so it can be person, location, organization, but it can also be a product. It can be basically everything you want and everything you want to, and everything you want to model, because actually, I forgot to mention the previous speaker was talking about Transkribus and the read cop, which is running Transkribus, and named entity recognition and named entity linking tools that we have designed in the NewsEye project in La Rochelle will be in read cop, so you can actually use them, apply them to your own collection soon, also with the same credit system, using existing models, creating your models. So initially, typically we have person, location, or an organization, but you can also mark up other things and train the models with other things like date and time, or you can even have other categories. But I think that was clear enough. The problem starts when you have old documents, as you saw. This is quite okay. But of course, if you start to have spots, marks, things written, stamps, that's a whole different story, because you, like I said, you have to find names that the text representation does not even have. And the problem of ambiguity is often illustrated with Washington, who can be a person, a state, a city, actually many persons and many cities, and so on. And Paris, same problem. There's a dozen of towns called Paris. There's people called Paris, and there's boats called Paris, and there's lots of knowledge bases, and we benefit from them because they exist. So why not? To answer all the, I mean, to identify cities, and you can see here Paris is Q90. And that's true also if it's Parisi in Finnish and whatever else it might be. And the disambiguation case is not so simple. So in this case, you know which Paris you mean. Well, you have context from France. So you think, okay, it's Paris in France, and it's likely the city that is the capital of France. So you can identify it. Sometimes it gets more tricky, because the Floyd revolution music with the wall. So what is it? Which wall is it? The Berlin Wall, a defensive wall? You have to find out that it's a music album. And this is maybe even more striking. Simple sentences like the World Cup 1966 was held in England. England won. So first occurrence of England, it's a location. Second occurrence of England, it's actually a football team. And then you have more tricky problems, especially with historical data. When you talk about West Germany, because West Germany, well, that does not exist anymore, at least in being a country. Also, actually, in this case, it's not even a country; it's a football team again, representing a country. But that country doesn't exist, and we actually had many cases of linking entities where we have Austria and Hungary, and we were wondering, is it Austria and Hungary, or is it the same entity from the time when it was one country? And it's even for humans, sometimes you don't actually know what to link. So the challenge, so the goals of the project, they are to handle all the noise. I mean, and to do this semantic enrichment, finding named entities, doing named entity linking, and all these things, in spite of the problems that you have with OCR and the problem that you have with finding the border of articles, and provide researchers with quantitative analysis that can be explained, that can be justified through qualitative pointers. So with the idea to avoid at all costs the black box effect. Of course, the idea is not to do the work of researchers. It's not to tell them, this is your finding, write it in your paper. It's to tell them, take a look at this, and these are the references that you should read to see whether this is worthwhile or not. And I will explain this a bit further. The idea, also a key idea, is that things work in every language. It can be applied to any corpus and also to any domain. In practice, what this means, so the project's periods of interest were 1850, 1950. That's the collections we focused on for practical reasons. We fully processed 1.5 million pages as a test case, 500,000 from each library, from the Library of Finland, the Library of France, and the Library of Austria. And the way we verified that what we did was useful is to test it in different domains, different languages, with different collections. So for instance, we had a research group. A partner was a research group in literature, who are especially interested in gender and the representation of female authors in newspapers in French. They are working in French collections. We had historians from Helsinki who were interested in the rise of the Finnish nation and the Finnish national identity, working in newspapers in Finnish and Swedish, the two languages of the country. Also historians from Austria working with German documents, and specialized in migration and remigration, and media specialists from also working in German. So we have combination of different languages and different fields, and also people working in different languages to make sure that what we do is as can be generalized as much as we hoped that it would. And the general framework of the project is that we start from digitized newspapers. We have a layer of article separation that I explained, optical character recognition. And then we have the semantics text enrichment, where we extract and disambiguate the named entities, the people, the person, locations, organizations. We do some opinion mining. We try to see whether these entities are mentioned in a positive or in negative light. And we do event detection. So for every article, does it include some new event? And the interesting thing is that everything we have here is a completely language independent knowledge base, because as you understood, the named entity linking is meant to give a number as an identifier for every named entity. And that number is, of course, not written in any language, or written in all languages if you prefer. The opinion is a number. It's positive if the opinion is positive, negative is the opinion is negative. And the event detection is actually a combination of named entities and concepts that are all also linkable to knowledge bases, and therefore represented by numbers. So here you have a huge amount of data describing millions of newspaper pages with items that are language independent. So then you can already give access to users to this through the demonstrator that we built. And then you can create more tools to actually analyze, do comparative analysis, look at trends that you can see in these collections across languages, across media, across time, anything that seems relevant. And then we have another layer, which is a personal research assistant, which is there to report and make suggestions on what to look at. And all of this is accessible to the general public through a user interface, and also, of course, to researchers in the humanities. So there's two, and of course, some tools are more, I mean, the general public will more likely look at the content directly through queries, and the researchers are more likely to look at trends and more advanced features. In terms of named entity recognition and linking, which is what we did in La Rochelle, and what I will tell a bit more about, unless Axel is here and can make a demo. We had, please interrupt me if so. We had very good results.
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Axel is here and he says he has difficulty connecting, but in your chat you can find the link for the demonstration. Axel,
Okay, it's recorded.
Yes, he said he upload. Do you have the link?
Okay.
Maybe you can show the link if Axel is not hearing us at the moment.
Okay. Well, maybe you can try. I will just say one more thing before giving him the floor. So that's good to know. So then I will not tell too much about. Can you still see my slides?
Yes.
Okay, good. So I will just say one more thing and then I will give him the floor and maybe we'll use the video if it's not working. So we have very good results with this named entity recognition and linking, but I just want, I mean, it's not just advertising. I want to say a bit why. It was very pleasant to see that we had the best scores in both recognition and both linking in 3 languages, English, French, and German, all the languages that were tested on historical newspapers. And what is interesting, I mean, it's a result of deep learning, and it just illustrates how well what you can do with deep learning nowadays. We had the best performance in all 3 languages with the same technique, only changing the training, some of the training features. I mean, actually changing only the word embeddings that we used. But everything else, the architecture was exactly the same. And I think it was quite interesting to see that this worked better than the works of people who are specialized in natural language processing for French or natural language processing for German. The same architecture worked best for all. And I will just say one thing. Well, I will just show you very briefly. I don't know if there's any computer scientists, but basically the idea is to use transformers. You know that some words will not be recognized. And the way you deal with it is that you try to look at more contexts around the text that you're analyzing. So you use 1 or 2 layers of transformers. So basically it's a bird plus 1 or 2 transformers, and then the CRF layer to identify the categories of the types of named entities. And that's it. Maybe I lost 90% of the room now. Just for anyone who knows about this and is interested. And okay, and the next thing is a demonstrator that Axel will show you. And for your information, also everything is available. You can use the code, you can use the data sets. There's educational material for teachers in the humanities, and you can find all that on newseye.eu. And we will continue working on the topic of historical newspapers and welcome collaborations like data sets or problems of researchers. Anything that is useful, we are happy to look into it. Of course, we cannot do everything that is useful, but we are interested in ideas. And then this is a cue for Axel to take over, if possible.
Thank you, Mr. Doucet and Mr. Jean-Caurant. We express our gratitude to the distinguished presenters for their interesting evidence and identification of contemporary trends. But does anyone from the audience on site and online have a commentary or an additional question for our presenters?
Sorry, do we need to play this link? I'm confused. I apologize.
Make it yourself fine.
Can you hear us? Axel is not here again.
Okay. So it will be best if you play the link.
For the whole presentation, he's been in and out at least 10 times. So there is something going on with his connection. So we can play the link from our computer. Is that okay?
Yes, please. Maybe it's better if you do it, because I'm not sure if I'm sharing sound if I play it. So it's only 4 minutes.
are trying to get it. Yeah, just a moment. Okay. Just a moment. We managed to open it, but now we are trying to share the screen. So. Go.
Axel is here again, if maybe somebody can put you in the panelist section.
Okay.
Just in case.
Okay, so round it.
So should I play it or not?
Yes. Play, please.
Full screen.
Full screen.
Thank you.
I'm on.
Just a moment.
Sorry. I'm connected to the speakers.
Maybe there is no sound.
Yeah, is there sound in the?
Maybe there is the screen.
Is there sound on the video? Listen. Okay, we have a sound for the Zoom,
But not for the room.
just a second.
It's okay. You have the main ID by just looking and reading.
Sorry, we have difficulties with the sound.
Hi everyone. I'm so sorry, I have some connection issues.
You can try to comment. I was actually about to comment. You can say a few words. I mean, I didn't mention that you can, or maybe I can do it now that I started.
Yeah, maybe continue. I'm so sorry.
I think you just saw something I did not mention, but is I talked a lot about quantitative analysis. Ah, sorry, I thought the video will continue running.
No.
But oh, it's okay. It's okay. Let's not. We can save time for questions. I mean, the thing I wanted to comment. You saw in the video. Everyone can play the video again, and all the videos are easy to find on YouTube and the project website if people are interested. But one thing that the video was showing, that I talked mainly about quantitative analysis, and I know that's one thing that computer science always think that more data is great, and we want to use a lot of data, and there's nothing more than analyzing lots of data because maybe it's interesting for us. But for digital humanities researchers, it's often much better to have a smaller set of data and do something very fine with it and do some more qualitative analysis. And we have a feature there that people seem to like a lot, which is that you can create your own collections. You can use keywords to create a collection, refine it with adding keywords, removing keywords, using topic modeling, and that's what the video was partly about. And then also you can export your collection because everyone has their own tools. So there's tools in the platform, but everybody has their own habits with their own tools. And you can extract the documents from the platform, download them, and analyze them with the tools that you are used to work. So that can be very. I know for many people it's more convenient because you have your own habits and it's easier to not change them every time a new tool is a new platform is out. Sorry, so there's no, actually quite little time for questions. So if there's any, we are here, and Axel is still here.
Okay, we repeat our thanks to both Mr. Doucet and Mr. Jean-Caurant. And I will repeat the question. Does anyone from the audience on site, audience online, have an additional commentary or a question for our panelists? Yes, please.
Hi, good morning. You just said that from the platform you can create your own collection and you can even export that. It's just not clear for me if you can even upload your own documents, like scanned newspaper, or you can create your own collection just from existing data on the platform.
No, unfortunately, you can download a sub collection from what is in the platform, but uploading your collection is not possible yet. We hope to integrate more collections, but it's not something that any user can do. Sorry about this. Yeah.
Thank you for taking part. Anyone else from the audience? Please, yes, please.
We have comments online if somebody can read it. We have one comment from previous talk. Yes, I just wanted to greet and to congratulate to our colleague who is working with Glagolitic documents with Transkribus, and we are already in touch after his lecture. We are actually working with for the Glagolitic documents using Transkribus, and we are now going to start the training model for automatic transcription. So we are looking for. It is quite a challenge to train that kind of model. So it was great to hear that for course of Glagolitic it is already done. So thank you for your talk. It was really great, and we already discussed our future cooperation. So thank you for being with us.
Thank you. I am looking forward to our future collaboration.
Thank you, Mr. Rabus. Anyone else? On site? If not, please let us grant our panelists our final applause as a giant token of merit. And allow me to avail myself of this opportunity to express my thanks and appreciation for having me here, and to conclude presiding over this session. It was a privilege.
Okay, I can just add that we will have now a coffee break and see you at 11:15 for our next session on information organization for the digital.